Admiral Park Hannah pressed her fingers against the cold metal railing of the command deck, her knuckles white with tension. The massive viewing screen in front of her showed a sight that would haunt humanity forever. Thousands of enemy ships surrounding Earth like hungry wolves circling their prey. Each alien vessel was the size of a city, their dark hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets in half. "Admiral, we have incoming transmission from the surface," said Lieutenant Li Min, his young face pale with fear. "The Shanghai colony just went dark. That's the 15th city we've lost contact with in the past hour." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 7 billion souls pressing down on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her expression was stone.
"What, sir?"
"Fleet status, Captain Kim?" Captain Kim Jun looked up from his tactical display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air recycling through the ship. "We have 943 vessels still operational. The enemy. They have over 50,000 ships in formation around Earth. More are arriving every minute." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems, and the distant rumble of explosions echoing through the ship's hull. Outside the viewport, streaks of plasma fire lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Earth's orbital defense platforms were being destroyed one by one, their massive structures crumbling under the relentless assault. "Sir," called out Ensign Park Jin from the sensor station, "the hegemony fleet is moving into attack formation. They're preparing for final bombardment." Hannah had fought these aliens before. The hegemony had swept through 17 star systems in the past 5 years, crushing every defense with cold efficiency. They saw humans as nothing more than insects, to be stepped on, a primitive species that had dared to spread beyond their home world. No mercy, no negotiation, no hope of survival. The flagship Defiance shuddered as enemy fire struck their shields. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge, and the artificial gravity flickered for a terrifying moment. Through the chaos, Hannah could hear the voices of her crew trying to maintain order, but she knew the truth. They were all going to die here. Admiral Kim Jun said quietly, "Perhaps we should consider evacuation protocols. Get the civilian transports away from Earth while we still can." "And go where?" Hannah replied, her voice bitter. "They've blockaded every jump point. There's nowhere to run." On the main screen, another defense platform exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision, their formation perfect, their tactics flawless. They had done this so many times before, conquered so many worlds, that destroying humanity was just another day's work. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported the weapons officer. "Their main guns are charging. It's estimated time to full power, for minutes. 4 minutes until the hegemony began burning Earth's surface. 4 minutes until every city, every forest, every ocean became a crater of molten glass." Hannah thought of her daughter, somewhere in the underground shelters of New Tokyo. She's probably scared and crying for her mother who would never come home. The communication console suddenly erupted with static. Lieutenant Li Min frantically worked his controls, trying to clear the signal. "Admiral, I'm picking up something strange. It's coming from the Outer Rim colonies, but the transmission is heavily encoded." "Put it through," Hannah ordered. The voice that emerged from the speakers was barely recognizable through the interference, but the words sent a chill through everyone on the bridge. "Project Horizon is ready. All units proceed to coordinates being transmitted now. This is our only chance." The transmission cut to dead silence. Hannah stared at the speakers, her mind racing. She had never heard of any Project Horizon, but the authorization codes were genuine, highest-level clearance authorized by the Colonial Administration itself. Admiral Kim Jun said slowly, "Those coordinates.
"Oh."
Therefore a position just outside Neptune's orbit. There's nothing there but empty space." "Sir, the hegemony fleet is beginning final approach," called out the tactical officer. "All enemy vessels are moving toward Earth. They're going to start with the populated continents." Through the viewport, Hannah could see the first enemy ships entering Earth's atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot as they descended toward the helpless cities below. Evacuation sirens wailed across the planet's surface, but there was nowhere to evacuate to. "Signal all remaining ships," Hannah ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're moving to those coordinates. Maximum speed, Admiral. We can't abandon Earth," Kim Jun protested. "We're not abandoning anything," Hannah replied. But her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. As the human fleet began to move away from their homeworld, she watched the first nuclear fires bloom across Earth's surface. The hegemony had begun their final assault. Whatever Project Horizon was, it had better be worth the lives of everyone they were leaving behind. Because in less than an hour, there might not be an Earth left to save. The enemy fleet followed their retreat, confident in their victory. They had no idea that humanity's most desperate hour was about to become something entirely different. The human fleet raced through space toward Neptune's orbit, their engines burning at maximum power, while the hegemony ships followed like hungry predators. Admiral Park Hannah stood in the secure briefing room deep inside the Defiance, staring at a man she had never seen before but who somehow held the highest security clearance in the colonial government. Dr. Choi Dae looked old and tired, his gray hair messy and his clothes wrinkled like he had not slept in days. But his eyes burned with an intensity that made everyone in the room pay attention. Behind him, holographic displays showed images that made no sense. Ancient ruins on distant planets, mathematical equations that hurt to look at, and strange geometric patterns that seemed to move when nobody was watching. "Admiral, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible," Day said, his voice hoarse but steady. 3 years ago, our colony on Kepler 44 to be found something buried beneath the surface. Structures that are millions of years old, built by a civilization that died out long before humans even existed. Captain Kim Jun leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of structures?" "A gateway," Day replied simply. "The aliens who built it called it horizon jumping. It's not just faster than light travel, it's movement through parallel dimensions." The ruins contained complete technical specifications, almost like they were left there on purpose for someone to find. Through the briefing room's small viewport, Hannah could see Earth burning in the distance. The planet's surface was covered in fires, and the hegemony ships were systematically destroying every major city. Billions of people were dying while she sat here listening to stories about ancient aliens. "Doctor, with respect, we don't have time for archaeology lessons," she said coldly. "Earth is being destroyed as we speak." "That's exactly why you need to listen," Day shot back. "We've been testing this technology in secret. Small scout ships, unmanned probes. We can open rifts in space-time itself, allowing instant travel across impossible distances." Lieutenant Lee Min looked up from his datapad. "If this works, why haven't we used it before? We could have evacuated Earth weeks ago." Day's expression grew grim, because the power requirements are enormous. To move a single small ship requires the energy output of a small star. To move an entire fleet. He gestured at the holographic displays showing massive energy projectors. "We had to build these in secret on 17 different ships. The strain might tear apart the fabric of reality itself. If it doesn't work," asked Commander Park Jin, "then our ships get scattered across multiple dimensions, and we all die horribly," Day said without emotion. "But if we stay here, we die anyway. The hegemony doesn't take prisoners." The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck their rear shields. Through the communication system, Hannah could hear damage reports from across the fleet. The hegemony was gaining on them, their superior speed allowing them to close the distance with each passing minute. Admiral called Kim Jun from the bridge. "We're approaching the coordinates. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from several of our ships. Whatever they're doing, it's building up fast." Hannah stared at the tactical display showing their position. They were now beyond Neptune, in the cold darkness of the outer solar system. Behind them, Earth was a tiny burning dot, and ahead lay only empty space. If this didn't work, they would all die here in the void. "Doctor, how certain are you that this will work?" she asked. "I'm not certain at all," Day replied honestly.
Ow.
"We've never attempted anything on this scale. The dimensional mathematics alone should be impossible. But the alternative is watching our species go extinct." The communication console crackled to life. "Admiral, this is Chief Engineer Lim Dong. The horizon projectors are at full power. We're ready to begin the jump sequence, but I have to warn. The energy readings are beyond anything we've ever recorded. If something goes wrong, ... I understand, Hannah said. She looked around the briefing room at the faces of her officers. These were good people, brave people who had followed her into what might be humanity's final battle. Signal all ships. We're going through the horizon. The fleet began forming up around the massive energy projectors that had been secretly installed. On several vessels, strange lights began to dance between the ships, and the space around them started to ripple like water. The hegemony fleet, still pursuing them, suddenly slowed as their sensors detected the impossible energy readings. "Dimensional rifts are opening," reported the navigation officer. "I'm reading tiers in space-time itself." Through the viewport, Hannah could see reality beginning to crack. Lines of brilliant light appeared in the darkness, spreading outward like broken glass. The universe itself was being torn apart to create doorways to somewhere else. "All ships begin horizon jump," she ordered. One by one, human vessels began disappearing into the rifts. They didn't fade away or explode. They simply ceased to exist in normal space. The hegemony commanders watched in confusion as their prey vanished into impossible tiers in reality. The Defiance was among the last to jump. As they approached the largest rift, Hannah felt the ship's hull beginning to vibrate with energies that shouldn't exist. Around them, the stars began to bend and twist. Then everything went white, and they fell through the cracks between worlds. The human fleet emerged into a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow light itself. Admiral Park Hannah gripped the command rail as the Defiance materialized in what appeared to be empty space, but her instruments told a different story. They were somewhere between galaxies, in a void that shouldn't exist. "Navigation report," she ordered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the impossible readings on every screen. Lieutenant Song Yu stared at her instruments with wide eyes. "Admiral, we're not in normal space anymore. Star charts are useless. There are no reference points. No galaxies visible. It's like we're floating in the space between everything." Captain Kim Jun worked frantically at his station. "Fleet status is ... problematic. We've lost contact with 300 ships. The dimensional jump scattered us across what looks like several light years. Some vessels are reporting critical damage to their horizon drives." Through the main viewport, strange lights began to appear in the distance. At first they looked like stars, but as the ship's sensors focused on them, they revealed themselves to be something far more incredible. Massive structures floated in the void, geometric shapes that defied easy description. They were clearly artificial, but built on a scale that made human cities look like toys. "Sir," called out Ensign Park Jin, "I'm detecting automated signals from those structures there. They're responding to our presence somehow." Dr. Choi Dae rushed onto the bridge, his portable scanner beeping wildly. "Admiral, those aren't just ruins, they're active. The civilization that built the Horizon technology, they didn't just discover dimensional travel. They mastered it. They built entire cities here in the void." The first structure they approached was a massive ring of dark metal, easily 50 kilometers across. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed, in rhythm with some unknown heartbeat. As the Defiance drew closer, sections of the ring began to move, opening like a flower to reveal a docking bay sized for ships much larger than anything humans had ever built. "Are we going inside that thing?" asked Kim Jun nervously. "We don't have much choice," Hannah replied. "Our fuel is limited, and we need to find the rest of our fleet." The ship passed through the opening, and artificial gravity took hold. The docking bay was filled with breathable atmosphere, though the air tasted strange and metallic. Emergency lights activated automatically, casting eerie shadows on walls covered in more of the glowing symbols. Commander Shinhai led the first exploration team into the structure. Her voice crackled through the communication system as she reported what she found. "Admiral, this place is incredible. The corridors are massive, designed for beings much taller than humans. But the technology, still functional after millions of years." Over the following hours, more human ships found their way to the structure. The exploration teams discovered that the ancient civilization had built not just one city, but dozens of them, connected by energy bridges that spanned impossible distances. Each structure contained technology that operated on principles humans barely understood. "Look at this," said Dr. Choide, standing in what appeared to be a control room. Holographic displays showed star maps of galaxies that no longer existed, and weapon systems that could destroy planets with a thought. They didn't just run from their enemies, they prepared to fight back. The most incredible discovery came when they found the central archive. The alien computers contained records of the civilization's final war, fought against something that sounded disturbingly similar to the hegemony. The previous inhabitants had faced the same existential threat, made the same desperate jump into the void between galaxies. "They succeeded where we're still trying to survive," Shinhai reported. "They lived here for thousands of years, building these cities, developing weapons that could strike across dimensions. But something went wrong near the end. The records showed that the ancient civilization had developed technology so powerful it could reshape reality itself. They had built weapons that could collapse entire star systems, tear holes in the fabric of space-time, and erase their enemies from existence. But the final entries in their archives were filled with warnings about the dangers of such power. Admiral called Kim Jun from the bridge. "We're receiving distress signals from our scattered ships. Some of them are trapped in dimensional pockets. Others are reporting that their horizon drives are completely burned out." Hannah studied the tactical display showing the positions of their fleet. They had nearly 1,000,000 people scattered across the void, many of them on ships that could no longer travel between dimensions. They were refugees in the truest sense, cut off from their home and unable to return. "Sir," said Lieutenant Lee. "Min, I'm detecting something else. Long-range sensors are picking up energy signatures that match hegemony technology. They're trying to follow us." The enemy was adapting, just as they always did. Soon, not even the void between galaxies would be safe from their pursuit. But now humanity had access to the same technology that had allowed the ancient civilization to fight back. "Begin full exploration of all structures," Hannah ordered. "We need to understand everything these people left behind. Their weapons, their technology, their mistakes." As human teams spread out across the ancient cities, they began to realize that they hadn't just escaped annihilation. They had found the tools to prevent it from ever happening again. The question was whether they could master such power without becoming the very thing they sought to destroy. In the darkness between galaxies, humanity's true test was just beginning. Chief Engineer Lim Dong crawled through the narrow maintenance shaft deep inside the alien megastructure. His helmet light cutting through the darkness ahead. The ancient metal walls hummed with power that had been dormant for millions of years, but now responded to human presence like a sleeping giant slowly waking up. "Admiral, you need to see this," he said into his communication device, his voice tight with concern. "These aren't just weapons. The entire network is designed to do something much more dangerous." Admiral Park Hannah made her way through the massive corridors of the alien city, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Now, the structures around her were so large that a human felt like an ant walking through a cathedral. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing brighter as more human teams explored deeper into the complex. In the central control room, Dr. Choide stood before a holographic display that showed the true scope of what they had discovered. The image rotated slowly, revealing a network of connected structures that stretched across multiple dimensions. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They built more than just cities," Day explained as Hannah approached. "This entire network is a weapon system. It can collapse the barriers between dimensions, destabilize entire star systems. The power readings suggest they could have destroyed hundreds of worlds at once." Hannah stared at the display, trying to understand the implications. "Are you saying they built something that could wipe out entire civilizations?" "It's not just civilizations," Day replied grimly. "They could erase star systems from existence, make it so they never existed at all. The mathematics involved are beyond anything we thought possible." Captain Kim Jun joined them at the display, his face pale after reading the technical reports. "The question is, did they actually use it? And if they did, what happened to them?" The answer came from the exploration teams working in the archive sections. Commander Shinhai had spent days trying to decode the alien records, and what she found painted a picture of a civilization that had faced an impossible choice. "They fought their enemies for thousands of years," she reported over the communication system. The records show massive battles, entire fleets destroyed, worlds burned. But they couldn't win through conventional warfare, so they built this network as a final solution. Did they activate it? Hana asked. The records are unclear, Shinhai replied. But the fact that these ruins exist, that the network was never completed, suggests they either couldn't bring themselves to use it, or something went wrong when they tried. Meanwhile, the perimeter scouts brought increasingly disturbing news. Commander Park Jin had been monitoring the dimensional rifts they had used to escape, and the enemy was learning to track them. Admiral, we've detected hegemony probe ships. At 3 different rift locations, he reported. They're sending small vessels through, trying to map our escape route. It's only a matter of time before they find us. The enemy was adapting, just as they always did. The hegemony had conquered 17 star systems by learning from every battle, studying every defeat and developing new tactics. They were learning to follow dimensional jumps, turning humanity's greatest escape into a trap. How long do we have? Hannah asked. Based on their current progress, maybe a week before they can track our main fleet, Jin replied. After that, they'll send everything they have through the rifts. The situation was becoming desperate. Nearly 1 million human refugees were scattered across the alien structures, many of them on ships that could no longer travel between dimensions. They were trapped in the void between galaxies with nowhere to run, and their enemies were closing in. Engineer Lim, how long would it take to make the network operational? Hannah asked. 72 hours if we work around the clock, he replied. But Admiral, if we activate this thing, there's no guarantee we can control it. The power levels involved could tear apart the fabric of reality itself. Hannah walked to the viewing port that looked out into the dark void. The scattered lights of the human fleet looked so small and fragile against the cosmic darkness. Each light represented thousands of people, families, children, the last survivors of Earth's billions. What about partial activation? She asked. Could we use just a portion of the network? Dr. Choide studied the holographic controls. Theoretically, yes. But even a partial activation would be like trying to control a star. One mistake, and we could destroy ourselves along with our enemies. The communication system crackled too. Life with reports from across the fleet. Food supplies were running low, medical facilities were overwhelmed with refugees, and morale was dropping as people realized they might never see home again. Admiral, said Kim Jun quietly, we need to make a decision. Do we try to run deeper into the void, or do we stand and fight with weapons we don't understand? Hannah closed her eyes and thought about her daughter, somewhere among the refugee ships. What kind of universe would she inherit? One where humanity ran forever from superior enemies, or one where they had the power to fight back but risked becoming monsters themselves? Begin activation procedures, she ordered. We're going to finish what the Ancients started. The Ancient Network began to wake up, responding to human commands with technology that could reshape the galaxy. The question was whether humanity would survive long enough to use it. 6 months had passed since the human fleet vanished into the dimensional rifts, and the hegemony believed they had won the ultimate victory. Their massive ships orbited Earth like metal vultures, strip mining the continents and enslaving the surviving humans in work camps. The planet's once blue oceans had turned gray with industrial pollution, and the green forests were nothing but burned stumps. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the harvesting operations with satisfaction. The primitive humans had been crushed so easily, their pathetic fleet scattered into the void where they would die slowly in the darkness between stars. Soon, Earth would be another empty husk in the hegemony's collection of conquered worlds. Then the alarms started screaming. Admiral, we're detecting dimensional rifts opening throughout the system, reported his tactical officer, confusion clear. In his voice, energy signatures are ... impossible. Nothing should be able to generate readings this high. Vexstar turned to his displays, expecting to see the usual scattered debris of human ships trying to flee. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The rifts were perfectly controlled, opening in precise formations around his fleet. The ships that emerged were not the desperate refugees that had fled months ago. The human vessels that phased into normal space pulsed with energy that seemed to bend light itself. Their hulls were covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and they moved with impossible grace through dimensions that shouldn't exist. These were no longer the primitive craft that had fled Earth. They were something entirely new. Admiral Pakana stood on the bridge of the Defiance, her eyes cold as winter as she surveyed the hegemony fleet that had turned her homeworld into a strip mine. The ship around her hummed with power drawn from the ancient network, and she could feel the dimensional barriers responding to her will, like extensions of her own body. "Begin the liberation," she commanded, her voice carrying across the communication channels to every human vessel in the fleet. The attack that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they opened controlled dimensional rifts that allowed them to strike from angles that violated the laws of physics. Hegemony vessels found themselves under attack from weapons that phased in and out of reality, their shields completely useless against projectiles that bypassed normal space entirely. Captain Kim Jun coordinated the assault from his tactical station, his fingers dancing across controls that manipulated the fabric of space-time itself. "Their command ship is attempting to retreat to hyperspace, Admiral. Request denied." Hannah replied coldly. Commander Shinhai's strike team had learned to weaponize the dimensional barriers themselves. The fleeing hegemony vessel found its escape route sealed by tears in reality, trapped between dimensions like a fly in amber. The massive ship writhed helplessly as spatial distortions tore through its hull, but the liberation of Earth was only the beginning. As human forces swept through the solar system, they opened communication channels to every oppressed species in the galaxy. The message was simple but revolutionary. The hegemony's 1,000-year reign of terror was ending. "This is Admiral Park Hannah of the Terran Liberation Fleet," she broadcast across all frequencies. "To every world that suffers under hegemony occupation, we bring you this promise. Freedom is coming. The age of fear is over." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On dozens of worlds, enslaved populations rose in rebellion as news of the hegemony's first major defeat spread like wildfire. Species that had cowered in terror for generations suddenly found courage they thought was lost forever. The hegemony's military commanders tried to organize a counterattack, but they were fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere and strike from dimensions they couldn't even detect. Human vessels phased in and out of reality like ghosts, destroying supply lines and command posts before vanishing back into the void. "Sir, we're losing contact with the outer colonies," reported a panicked hegemony officer. "The humans are somehow coordinating attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously." Admiral Vexstar watched his empire crumble on the tactical displays. How is this possible? They were primitive 6 months ago. They had no advanced technology, no dimensional capabilities. He would never learn the answer. The Defiance materialized directly in front of his flagship, its hull blazing with ancient energies. The dimensional weapon that struck his vessel didn't just destroy it, it erased it from existence, leaving only empty space where the pride of the hegemony fleet had been. The final battle came at the hegemony's central stronghold, a massive space station that had served as their capital for 1,000 years. The human fleet approached not as desperate refugees, but as liberators armed with technology that could reshape reality itself. "All enemy vessels are surrendering," reported Lieutenant Li Min, amazement in his voice. "They're broadcasting messages of unconditional surrender on all frequencies." Admiral Hannah stood at the observation deck of the Defiance, watching as the last symbols of hegemony power were dismantled by freed slaves from a dozen different species. Through the transparent steel, Earth was visible in the distance, its blue oceans slowly clearing as the industrial pollution was neutralized by human restoration teams. "Admiral," said Dr. Choide, joining her at the viewing port, "the other species are asking what comes next. They want to know if we're going to become the new rulers of the galaxy." Hannah smiled for the first time in months. "Not how humans do things. We didn't cross the horizon to become conquerors. We came back to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And humanity had found its true purpose among the stars."